All right. It's Wednesday night, and we are back on the live like we are every Monday and Wednesday here on the channel, over here on X, YouTube, Facebook, and over here on TikTok. Run it down with you guys tonight in the AMA like we always do. And man, there's a lot of things going on out there in the macro that will be quite interesting to see how they play out. We've got Russia evacuating all of their people from Israel right now. We've got Russia deploying submarines in areas that could be choke points for oil. We've got the US flying aircraft over the Strait of Hormuz to watch things. All that to say, again, we've continued to talk about oil here on this channel. If you've been living under a rock, I'll go into the domino theory for you a little bit. Appreciate again for you taking time out of your schedule on Wednesday night to come hang out with me and ask good questions and listen to what I have to say. So, when it comes to oil, really, Venezuela has been a big deal for the U.S. We've positioned ourselves where effectively we're now in control of all of the resources there in Venezuela, which is a big deal. Their stock market is on a tear. I don't know if you guys have seen the Venezuelan stock market, but it's up over 100% in the last week since we took Maduro from Venezuela. So, I don't know if that is, it looks like hyperinflation in their stock market. That's the only other time that we've seen this type of move in stocks, is when a currency is being devalued at a substantial rate. Now, there could be suppression there in their stock market because their economy has been squeezed and held down by the pressure of that dictatorship. And now that that's been removed, people are very hopeful and speculating on, there to be, substantial GDP created in that region. That's quite possible. And we have seen literally a double, 100% return on people's money that they've put into the Venezuelan stock exchange from a week ago. Wild. It's not a meme coin. It's like their index for Venezuela. I believe we're close to 4,000 in whatever currency they have there in Venezuela. Thank you, my wonderful wife with the tea. The year of the horse here in 2026. My wife's favorite year for sure. So anyway, back to Venezuela, and it was very strategic. Again, we went over this Monday why the U.S. would take over that jurisdiction. But now that impedes China or Russia's ability to get access to those resources. And along with, Iran, and North Korea, there are some other nations that are adversarial to the U.S. and would want, if Iran is going to revalue their currency, they're going to want an extremely high oil price to be able to back that currency with. And so for them, it would be a net benefit. A lot of people are saying, if they were to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, it would cause an issue for them because they're basically shooting themselves in the foot. They don't have a way to be able to ship that oil if they do that. I don't think it has to be very long that they shut it down. I just think there needs to be a threat. It could even be that Lloyd's won't ensure shipping through that channel. Wouldn't even have to shut it down. If nobody has the insurance, they're not going to move stuff through there, because if it gets blown up or there's a problem, they're not covered. So, there could be and that didn't come from me. That came from another smart individual in the mastermind. Just full transparency on that. A lot of intelligent people over there in that group. And if you want to be part of that group, we would love to have you. We are going to shut down social membership after this month. So I know I told you guys we're going to shut down, signups completely. Looking over things, we want to allow people the opportunity to participate there, but I do think we're going to close out the social portion of it. So if you do want to participate in the mastermind, again, you can use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1 MO, get you a little bit of a discount. I think $5 off your first month in social or Carbon One. And Again, we just won't be taking any more social members. We're at 18,000 people at this point, and so the general chat's become it's like 90 messages a minute in the general chat. It's a lot. So with that, and you will get access to all the in real life events. You get access to all the town halls. There's a huge amount of benefit and value for just the social membership there, but we will be restricting that to carbon 1 and higher after this month. So February 1st will be the cutoff for that. And again, you got plenty of time, so don't feel like rushed or anything to get in there. But if that's something you're interested in, we would love to see you there before the end of the month. If we see price appreciation before then, we are going to lock it down, like we've talked about for a long time. And if we do see these catalysts continue to progress here for the macroeconomic events and the spike in oil denominated in Japanese yen, I don't necessarily care about the US dollar. Yen or oil priced in yen is what we're really watching because that is what's going to cause inflation there in Japan's economy and cause the Bank of Japan to have to aggressively raise interest rates, which would then unwind the reverse carry trade. And the full domino theory plays out with XRP smelling like a rose on the other side of it, being 3 or 4 digits in order to be able to save the day on the back end of the stock market. Also, still waiting on the BlackRock ETF. We saw Wisdom Tree remove their S1 filing yesterday evening. Interesting that they would do that. I don't know that they feel like maybe they couldn't be competitive. There's already a saturation in the market with the number of ETFs that are out there. Or maybe they caught wind that the big dog was about to come in the door. And they said, well, we don't want to, roll this out at the same time as they are. We're not going to get much traction. They're going to take the majority or the lion's share of the inflows on the market. So just some speculation. I don't have anything specific around that, complete conjecture, but sure would be interesting if we did see, some of the bigger players announce ETFs. We did see Morgan Stanley launch an ETF, not for XRP, but I believe for Bitcoin. And then we also had some interesting IPOs today. Discord filing for IPO today. I think that we are going to have a really aggressive IPO season here in 2026 for many of the tech companies, fintech companies, and the like. We've already seen some pretty big IPOs this year with Figure and Circle. I guess those were at the end of last year. So this is the first big IPO announcement really this year in 2026 for Discord. A lot of conjecture out there on Twitter today about Ripple going public. Or not so much, really. They're stating that Ripple's flush with cash and they want to maintain their privacy and continue to operate in the fashion that they are. There are a few things that could force Ripple to go public. If they have more than 2,000 people on their cap table, they then have to go public and file their S1. I don't know how far away they are from that, but I can tell you that the shares on the secondary market are the most liquid traded shares for any company in private equity. And not the real Jake, this is a recording. Okay. So when it comes down to the actual filing for their IPO, I don't think that Ripple will IPO in a traditional sense. I think they will have a direct listing. So there are a couple different ways that you can get listed on the public stock exchange. There are 15 or 16 different exchanges. The 2 largest exchanges that you guys know about and have heard of are the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. There's still other competitors out there, but those 2 get the lion's share of liquidity and new listings when companies go public. A traditional IPO, you would have a roadshow, you would go out for 6 months, you would court all the investment banks, you would dilute your shareholders, issue new shares, and give them first right, basically, on the listing of those. They'd be able to sell those to their private clients, and that's how you drive liquidity and share price up on the stock. Gemini just had a traditional IPO not that long ago. That was another big one in 2025. A direct listing is like Coinbase. So Coinbase did not go the traditional route of IPO. They let their shareholders that had bought in sell onto the market. They had enough brand recognition that they felt they could go public without having to court the investment banks. And likely the investment banks already had pretty significant allocations. And my speculation and knowledge tells me that they do the same for Ripple. They have allocations to Ripple stock already. And we also saw Citadel, we saw Fortress, and a few others participate on this last round at a $40 billion valuation to the tune of about a $500 million investment into Ripple in late 2025. So I don't believe that they will go public in the first half of 2026. I tend to think that they are going to go public on a Texas stock exchange. BlackRock and Citadel are backing the Texas Stock Exchange here in Dallas. We're about 6 blocks away from the office there at our office building. And the first half of this year and probably even into Q3, the Texas Stock Exchange is only going to be ETFs or exchange traded products, ETPs. Later in the year, they will be listing, one-off actual stocks. But I think it would be a very compelling story for them to go public on the Texas Stock Exchange, being backed by BlackRock and Citadel, especially if the Texas Stock Exchange is tokenized at that point. And we know that NASDAQ has applied for that with the SEC. We know that the New York Stock Exchange is also looking at that. But back to the other ways you can go public. With the direct listing, that means that people that own shares would immediately be able to sell their shares onto the market once it was listed. And that's what happened to Coinbase, and that's why you saw Coinbase stock, fall substantially at the open, did not go up. In a traditional IPO, those that were, private investors early on that are not the investment banks, there will be a lockup period. It can be as little as 90 days, but more often than not, it's 6 months to a year before you can actually sell those shares, similar to Circle, right? Circle also had a traditional IPO, and there's a lockup period for those people that were holding those shares on the private market before they went public. So that's my thought. We've got the SPAC, which is another way that companies go public. That is when a public company acquires a private company and then changes its name. We've seen this with Evernorth, right? So they changed the ticker to XRPN, and they are going to be the treasury company, or the DAT, digital asset treasury company here in the US that's stockpiling XRP. They've already raised $1 billion in XRP while the price is still low. So good for them. And then they will also be seeding DeFi protocols and, developing or helping to cultivate the DeFi applications on chain and generate additional ways where people can generate returns on their XRP, which, at Digital Wealth Partners, we are on the forefront of. We have the first 2 products here in the US where people can generate returns on their XRP legally through a securities offering. You do need to be accredited. You can hold your assets at Anchorage and in institutional custody with Digital Wealth Partners. And again, they have the income fund and the growth fund. If you want to learn more about those things, you should reach out to digitalwealthpartners.net. And, as things progress with Evernorth and there are more institutional DeFi opportunities, I can tell you that Digital Wealth Partners will be on the forefront of that as well, providing that to their retail or high net worth clients, family offices that work with us in order to be able to get access to those institutional grade opportunities here domestic in the US. So as far as it says dark shirt, easy to read the chat. Yeah, apparently my white shirt last week messed people up on TikTok because the comments on TikTok are all white and they could not read them. So anyway, that's how I wanted to kick it off tonight. A couple of the big pieces out there in the news that I found interesting today. And with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the chat here. We got Michael. He says, maybe BlackRock is involved with Ripple and XRP in another capacity. They probably own more XRP than anyone anyway. I think that there's a high probability that there is a pre-negotiated contract with BlackRock in the escrow in one of the 1,700 NDAs that Ripple has. Complete speculation. Nobody's ever told me that. I have no verification behind it. But if I were betting dollars to donuts, maybe that's on the bingo card here in 2026. We got more XRP. Thank you for the super chat, my man. Appreciate you there. I don't see a question, but I do appreciate your support. Go ahead and we'll go over here to Astronomy Real Channel. Beyond Broke Mastermind Carbon One. Awesome. Thank you for being part of the community. Family of 5, 200K XRP average at $2. No debt, 4 million in assets, 250,000 cash. Not financial advice. Would you buy more here or just be happy with the 200K? Well, I don't know what your long-term financial goals are. I'm going to guess that you are in your mid to late 40s or early 50s if you have a family of 5. I could be wrong. Maybe you started strong and you're in your 30s and you're doing really well. But that would be my guess for your age. So your time horizon there would probably be traditionally 15 years to retirement. So you have you still have a decent time horizon for this XRP to appreciate. It sounds like you have no debt, you have good cash flow, and probably a higher paying salary job in order to be able to stockpile that much cash and have that much in assets. So I don't know what your long-term goals are. If it's just to set your family up for success over multiple generations, you could sit back 50% of what you had in a long-term trust, get it into an asset protection trust, and just let it grow over time. Keep the other half in a LLC that is added to your assigned to your living trust, for probate protection and creditor protection, but you'd still have full control over that amount. And then live off of that portion and potentially pay taxes on behalf of the trust in order to continue to compound the XRP inside the trust over the long term. Do you want an extra 100,000 XRP, I guess, is your question. It depends on your goals. If you're looking for diversified streams of income or have a shorter term time horizon to retire from your day job, probably not. Well, the diversification piece, I do think that there's going to be substantial cash flow off of the XRP, and we can already do that at Digital Wealth Partners for people. And we are going to continue to bring out products here in 2026 that will provide people that opportunity to live off of the returns on their XRP without having to capitalize the gains and take profits if they don't want to. Obviously, there's always that choice, and you never go broke taking profits. Me personally, if I don't like to keep more than like 25 or 30 grand in the bank. I don't trust the banks after SVB and Silvergate and all the stuff with the regional banks. It's obviously fractional reserve lending. Business accounts are a bit different. Obviously need, enough cash flow to make sure you're making payroll and all of your other obligations and bills for the business. So it sounds like you probably either are a high level executive or own your own business to have these type of numbers. Just spitballing, I could be way off. I'm trying to infer context here because you only get so much that you can type me in the super chat. Me personally, I would continue to put money where I know it's going to do well. And I do, right? So I can't give you financial advice, and this is probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes only. If you need financial advice, you could always work with Digital Wealth Partners and talk to a real financial advisor that will consult with you and tell you exactly what to do with your money on the crypto. For the amount of assets that you have, you could absolutely be a client there, get institutional custody, add your spouse as a beneficiary on the account or a co-signer, have your kids on there. You got 5 kiddos. They're probably a little bit older, but you probably have a range. And so we can make sure that, your stuff's protected even if they don't know how to work with crypto. And then put the XRP that you already have to work to be able to generate returns and cover any costs that we have. So, and if you wanted to buy more, if you did decide to buy more and you work Digital Wealth Partners, it's going to be the cheapest place to do that. It's only 20 basis points with no spread in order to be able to execute a buy order over there through Anchorage's infrastructure. So, personally, I continue to buy even at these levels. Nice little pullback today from the run up that we saw earlier, and still up about 20% if you bought before New Year's, going into that day, thinking things were going to move aggressively higher, which I think everybody's a bit disappointed that they didn't. But with all of the macro that's playing out here, I don't know. 2026 is looking promising. Again, I've been told not to give timelines or price predictions for at least 6 months. So I'm gonna make good on that for my attorneys. I don't know if I gave you exactly what you were looking for there, my man. Hopefully, that gives you some context on how I think through things and what I'm doing. But again, can't give you financial advice. I hope that you make the best decision for you and your family. And again, if you want to work with an advisor, Digital Wealth Partners, they can absolutely walk you through all of that. They do value-based planning. Going to ask you a lot of questions for context, and they can help you execute whatever is the best path for you and your family. All right. We got Marilyn Jordan. They say in 2021, the Fed lowered rates to near zero and expanded its balance sheet to $4 trillion. Are we expecting a similar scenario in 2026? Help XRP reach high numbers. Do we need lower rates? I mean, obviously the rates are coming down. I do think that they are going to. So here's the deal with XRP. It's going to increase velocity of money when they implement it. Traditionally, the only lever that they could pull at the Fed to do that was lower interest rates. And it's a downstream effect, right? So they lower interest rates, they make money cheaper to borrow, more people borrow money, more money flows around the economy. When XRP is implemented for instant settlement, the velocity of money picks up without them having to do that. And so I think that a healthy economy in the US would be somewhere around 4 to 6% interest rates. I would love it if the Fed or the Treasury, whoever ends up taking over control of this stuff, leaves rates about where they're at. I think, making 4 or 5% on a savings account, people are okay with leaving their money in a bank, which provides stability for their ability to lend more money out and make good decisions with that capital because they have to generate a return for those people. It's economically sustainable for them to have rates here. If they continue to lower interest rates, we get into a position like Japan's been in for the past 30 years where it's difficult to raise them without causing people to be over leveraged because people continue to extend themselves to however much leverage they can get. And if the money is free, like it's been in Japan, we see tens of trillions of dollars that have been borrowed from the Bank of Japan and put to work across multiple economies, which is now a global margin call waiting to happen. I don't think the US wants to do that. So my speculation is that when they move to distributed ledger technology and we do have instant settlement, they might actually slightly increase rates from here in order to offset some of the velocity of money, because there's two components to inflation in an economy. One is M2 money supply, or how much money there is in an economy. And the second piece of that is the velocity of money. So how fast money moves through an economy. So I buy a hot dog, the hot dog guy gets gas, the gas guy at the gas station, buys a soda or a pizza later that night. That dollar changed hands 3 times that day. That is a fast velocity of money. Right now, the velocity of money is the least it's ever been. People are hoarding cash. If they do have cash, they're stockpiling it in assets, trying to get out of fiat dollars. Well, like we just talked about, right? Like I'm not keeping a ton of money in the bank because the return isn't enough to offset inflation. And I would much rather have bearer assets like, a lot of people are holding precious metals and have done extremely well on those. Other people are buying real estate. Other people are buying stocks. Other people are buying crypto or XRP. All those are going to do better than inflation for the most part. So, with all that said, I don't see a similar scenario playing out. I do think that the Fed, once they implement XRP, it's going to have to lower M2 money supply. I think that they're going to have to take money out of circulation, and I think they may have to slightly raise interest rates in order to offset the deflationary pressures that are going to happen One, from the costs moving down, and two, the inflationary pressures of the velocity of money picking up. Again, not sure if that gave you exactly what you wanted, but that is my speculation, my theory, my 2 cents. All right, we got AWAGS 18. Oh, excuse me, 16. AWAGS 16 says, Jake, Mastermind Carbon One, awesome dude, glad to see you, or ma'am. Is it safe to say that XRP/crypto in general will dip if the U.S. government, the U.S. strikes Iran tomorrow, or an active war from any other country that matters, aka a good time to stack our bags? Thank you and God bless. God bless you. All I know is we're in for volatility. And I know what the other side of the volatility looks like. The ups and downs to get there, your guess is as good as mine. I do have a crystal ball, but it does not show me the exact future. It's just long term. I can just see the long term future. So, all that being said, I've seen some people take 10% of their bag and take some profits and hold those in cash. Again, I'm not recommending this. I'm not doing this. This is just other people I've had conversations with. And they are putting limit orders, in the $1, $150, $160 range. You need enough liquidity in crypto for those trades to execute. If there's significant volatility, you could get it at those prices. If you're looking to catch a falling knife lower than that, I don't know that there's going to be enough liquidity for those trades to execute at those levels. And we've already seen a significant pullback in the market on 1010 that really erased the majority of any of the downside in XRP, or filled the gaps on the chart. Again, not a TA guy, listening to people smarter than me on that side, but based on what they see and I see, I think all those gaps are filled. So for me, if I was going to guess, and again, I am with my bag, I just continue to dollar cost average here. I know that that's a winner over the long term. XRP is going to be wildly successful, 3, 4, 5 digits over the long term, in my personal opinion. And so, again, macroeconomic events, catalysts, perfect storm, things have to play out for that to happen. But when they do, you're not going to care if you bought it at $2, $1.50, $1.80. People that bought Bitcoin at those prices, do you think they care a whole lot? No. They're not thinking about, I could have got more. If you're worth $100 million or more, $20 million or more, $50 million or more, you're doing pretty good. You can literally park that money, earn 3 to 5% on it a year with some of the products that we're going to bring to market, and live very, very comfortably. So anyway, that's, again, just my 2 cents. I don't know that I'm not planning on it going lower, but again, would love to be wrong and hope other people are able to stack their bags, like you said. Christian says, you the man, brother. Appreciate you. He says, God bless you and your Ohan abundantly. Thank you. If you can answer, do you have an NDA with BIS or IMF? I do not have an NDA with either one of those regulatory bodies. Looking at going to the World Economic Forum in 2027. So all those things could change, but as of today, no, I do not have NDAs with those bodies. Nick says, loving the Jake Bateman picks in Discord. Can the Bank of Japan call urgent meeting to raise rates? Yeah, so that's how all this stuff happens when really black swan events take place. You're going to see emergency meetings by these central banks. In 2008, it was not a planned meeting when they came out and lowered interest rates aggressively. They reacted to the situation in the market, and obviously too late, in order for them to really dig their way out of that one, because there, again, was too much leverage built up in the system. Too much bad debt had been issued, and there wasn't really a way to offset that with economic growth without incentivizing people to borrow money and generate GDP. to increase the velocity of money and, all the other things we just talked about for the macro. So, yeah, they absolutely could call an emergency meeting and raise interest rates, and I do think that will happen when oil spikes. This person, I'm going to butcher their name, sorry. They say, do you think BlackRock is waiting for the Clarity Act? I think that BlackRock is waiting for the crisis. I think the Clarity Act could follow very quickly after that. We see them, the next markup for the Clarity Act is on the 15th of this month. My speculation is that they're going to push the XRP's price high enough to use it and start using it right before the Clarity Act gets passed. Now, I could be wrong with that. They could kick the can on the Clarity Act out further if they need to. All they would have to do is continue to stall and move things along slowly until the next week, around the 26th, where they're going to have to start focusing on the government budget. And if they don't get something solved by the 30th, then the government shuts down again. So, if that happens and they still don't have it passed and the government gets shut down again, that could push it out really to, if it had the same length of shutdown as the last one, we're all the way into March before there's even another shot at doing this at all. So, it could be all the way into early Q2 before the Clarity Act gets passed. So, all that being said, I'm hopeful that it gets passed here early in January, because I think that's probably the only opportunity to get it across the line. But I do believe, again, I've stated this multiple times, that XRP will appreciate prior to the Clarity Act. And that will require BlackRock's ETF to be filed in order to cause the supply shock, in order to push it to the levels needed for them to start using it to settle the back into the stock market and de-risk all the unrealized losses they're going to have from the Bitcoin ETFs when the reverse carry trade unwinds. So I think BlackRock, long way of saying, I think BlackRock ETF happens before the Clarity Act. Rick Johnson, my man, he says, Thomas DeLauer of crypto. You know what? I'll take that. That's a good compliment. He says, Anna Paula Luna and others want pass legislation to ban digital ID and CBDCs. If this happens, what effects of XRP? Nothing really. There is a native amendment on the XRPL that's already been passed, which is for digital identity. In order to participate in those ecosystems, you need an identity. You need to be able to see the counterparties you're participating with. That's why they need to pass permission domains and permission dexes. They need to be able to KYC people, KYB people, have credentials for accreditation. And if you're a QP or, whatever other certification that allows you to participate in certain investments or ecosystems, they've, created the multi-purpose token on the XRPL to be able to issue stocks directly on chain. So all that being said, for market infrastructure, it doesn't really affect XRP. And we already passed a bill in the Genius Act where they don't allow a central bank digital currency here in the US. That was part of that deal. So I don't think that we're ever going to, I think we will have privatized stable coins. We obviously already have that. Jerome Powell's already spoken about it multiple times, that he believes that's the direction it will go. And all of those will still need to be able to settle between counterparties with, a trustless distributed system, and all be interoperable with the same bridge asset. Voila, XRP. So we'll see if they pass that legislation. I don't think they're going to. I think they need digital ID. In order for you to participate in a tokenized world, they're going to have that. We got Brandon. He says, Lone Star Legend. What's up, man? I like that name. Thank you. For the naysayers, ETH moved violently over a year, up over year over year, and nobody questioned it. Why is it nobody believes that XRP could pull the same trends, especially with the utility of XRP? Your conviction is infectious. Grateful for your wisdom. Thank you for the kind words, the support, and the super chat. And great question. I don't know is the real answer. I mean, I've talked about this before. ETH went from a single digits to 3 digits in 12 months. Solana did it in 9 months. We've seen aggressive moves in crypto before when liquidity moves into these ecosystems. I think the problem people have with XRP is the amount of XRP they see in the total supply. And they have a hard time comprehending the market cap that it would be at those high prices. But again, it's really down to available supply is what matters. So you have total supply, you have circulating supply, and then you have available supply. I would be willing to wager. Well, I better choose my words wisely because I lost my last bet and I had to pay $9,000 in XRP, 2 scams at the end of the year. So I have conviction that we will see that similar type of move in XRP, and it will be caused by a supply shock because the available supply for trading is going to be so low. So, millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars or $1 billion in inflows in a very short period of time would cause significant price appreciation on XRP, far beyond what most people believe is reasonable. But I do believe that's the reason most people have a hard time conceptualizing that is because of the total supply of tokens versus those other two that you mentioned. Well, you mentioned ETH, I mentioned Sol. We got B Fogert 777. They say Japan is a U.S. ally. Even if Iran tries to cut off access to oil in the Middle East, the U.S. can still help out Japan to reduce the cost. How does the oil spike happen in Japan given that? How much further away is the U.S. from Japan than Iran? It's a lot further away. Even Venezuela, like they would have to go through the Panama Canal to get over to the other ocean to be able to get to Japan, which is still a long, long way away, which increases shipping cost, which increases the cost of the oil. That's the whole reason that, we just did what we did in Venezuela is the shipping cost to get it from Venezuela to the US is way, way less than it is to go all the way across the ocean from Iran with the oil tanker. So, Elon's going to get his way with rocket ships, but until then, they're going to continue to ship things via the ocean or via sea. And so you just have to extrapolate that out for the distance and the additional cost that's going to be associated. Sure, we could help them out, but it's not going to do much better. Just being candid. So that's the reasoning the oil spike is going to happen. There's not another jurisdiction in proximity with easy access to oil that they could rely on to be able to offset the difference when there is a supply constraint from the Strait of Hormuz or something else there in the Middle East. Ready 7117 says, Jake, KY wife. My wife and I are big fans. Hey, thank you. Appreciate you both. They say, without saying anything, are you still cool as a cucumber? Wink, wink. Yeah. I've known this is coming for a long time. I can continue to come on here and explain things. And I try to give you guys an easy way to understand this stuff and candidly try to help people understand macroeconomics because some of this stuff is complicated. If you did, like, you could even take, micro and macroeconomics in high school and college. A lot of the stuff in those classes, they don't really tell you how it applies to reality. I try to come on here and convey that in a way that's easy to digest and understand, and also explain how certain events playing out in a specific scenario will lead to the appreciation of XRP. And that could absolutely happen imminently, or it continues to be it could continue to be pushed out. I don't really know what they're waiting on at this point. We've seen everything has been lined up for weeks. And we know that a couple weeks ago was when they were originally planning on going to get Maduro. So I don't know what pushed that back aside from the weather there in Brazil and Venezuela. But all that being said, everything still stands that things could move very quickly as soon as we see the spike in oil. So all that, again, to say, waiting on Iran and Israel and whatever's going to happen over there, and why Russia is now pulling everybody they can out of the region. Feels like they know something. And there's somebody else that said, the U.S. could strike Iran tomorrow. A lot of people are concerned about World War III. I don't think we're going to have World War III. Trump just, somebody asked him if he was going to issue a war on the drug cartel. He said, why do I need to issue a war? We'll just kill them if they bring more drugs here. He was serious. He was like, we don't need to issue a war on terrorism or a war on the drug cartel. We are not, anyway, I think that things will probably carry on as they have been, and people are not going to poke the bear. I think we're in a position of power at this point with everything that we've done. DFW Mike, my man, he says, freaking a legend. Thank you, man. I think my new business after price appreciation will be a worldwide XRP party planner. Say hello to the tea lady. Have a good evening. Thanks for everything that you do. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. We would love a party planner there in the mastermind. We're going to continue to do really cool in-life events. We've already done some pretty cool ones, but the yacht in Monaco is on the list. Supercars in Dubai is on the list. Sydney, Australia, snorkeling over there is on the list. A lot of things are on my bucket list that I'm hoping we can do as cool mastermind events in the coming years. We did Lake Tahoe last year, which was cool. I'd like to go skiing there. So yeah, I vote for you, my man. If you want to be the party planner there in the mastermind, we definitely need one. David, Mr. Miranda, how are you, sir? He says, legend. Love your stuff, my man. You have inspired me very much. Coincidentally, I work at Fastenal in Texas and have been here 8 years. Will retire when XRP moons. I love that, dude. I'm sure you know Jake W. I won't say his last name because other people will know who he is. But you worked at Fastenal when I worked at Fastenal a long time ago. And I managed Mesquite, the Mesquite location, the Forney location, and then worked out of the Terrell location for a while also. So I don't know what district you're in or who your district manager is. A lot of turnovers happened since I left. But very cool to see other people in industrial sales taking advantage of the opportunity, and appreciate the kind words in the super chat, my man. Fastenal's, so for those that don't know, Fastenal is a Fortune 500 company, I think still. Their margins are very nice. And they are the cheapest, voted by other Fortune 500 companies. The cheapest CEO when I worked there was Dan. I don't know who the CEO is now, but they make it really rough to, they run a tight ship. I'll just say it that way. All right, we'll go on up here in the chat. Don't take money out of the till and buy donuts. I'll tell you that. You get your hand slapped for that. We got GAXRP guy. He says, hey, Jake, Mastermind, Carbon 2 family. Awesome, dude. Love it. Glad to see you here. He says, absolutely love this community. Hoping my Aunt Leah is listening, trying to get her in the Mastermind before we lock it down. Best mods and best place for fresh information. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I feel so blessed and humbled on a daily basis. You have intentions when you start things, and you want to cultivate a certain culture, and to see it, cumulatively come to 18,000 people and still maintain everybody wanting to help one another, everybody lifting each other up, everybody being professional, it's just been astonishing. I was concerned as we scaled and had more people come in that it would be difficult to maintain that type of atmosphere, but really it's continued to just compound on itself, which is beautiful to see. So thank you for being part of the Mastermind. Thank you for being part of Carbon 2. If you're listening and you want to check it out, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you the first month for $5 off in social. And again, we're locking social out. There will be no more social membership sold after this month. So February 1, it'll be carbon 1 or higher will be the only way to get into the mastermind. And if we do see, things escalate here quickly in January and XRP gets over $10, we will lock it down completely. And it will be invite only and be substantially more costly to participate. One of the people over here, Tamas, asked me, how old am I? I am 34 years old. Tamas, appreciate you. We've got CK13 says, Carbon 1 member, nominating you for Nobel Economic Science Prize in 2026. You are a legend. Thank you. I appreciate that. Reading Infinite Banking on crypto. What would you suggest to get the most out of it? What principles should I focus on? Really just understanding how infinite banking works and how to become your own bank and how to structure that the right way. So, we use PPLI to be able to do that. We're able to buy digital assets inside of a private placement life insurance policy. We're going to be launching a fund for some of that stuff here in the near future. We do have the RIA to be able to manage those types of policies. There's just, again, like I went to school for finance and nobody taught me about any of this stuff. I didn't learn about financial products. I learned a little bit about how to trade and hedge and use options my senior year. Like one of my last 4 classes that I took taught me some of that. But outside of that class, business, law, and maybe accounting, I really don't use the majority of my finance degree. Well, economics, I would say I do use economics pretty regularly. So maybe those 4 classes would be the ones that I use. But back to the book. If you guys haven't yet, please go check that out. We do have a book on Amazon, Infinite Banking in Crypto. Myself and Max Avery, and also Carl von Schwartz, who is the head of our insurance division at Digital Ascension Group, or Azure Legacy is the name of that company. I would read the book, and then when you go talk to Carl or our team over there at Azure Legacy, you're going to have a deep understanding of a lot more of the insurance products that they're going to bring you. So, if you come in flying blind and you don't know about whole life insurance or IULs or ability to borrow against the cash value of a policy or how that's structured, and so that you don't mech it, we're basically making it a modified endowment contract. And you're just, again, hoping that somebody crafts a policy in your favor. We do reviews of policies also. We've had about 50-50. People bring us IULs that have been structured by other people. A lot of times, and IULs get a bad rap. I don't necessarily love them either. I think they're a great tool if you have a long time horizon for investing. So your children, I think IULs are great for kids. If you are retiring and somebody convinces you to roll your 401k into an IUL, I think that should be a crime, because that's not good for you. It's great for them. But anyway, 50% of the time, those aren't structured the right way for people, and they probably need a different policy, something that would be more beneficial for their needs, their family, their long-term, wealth management and planning. So after you read the book and have a decent understanding of all those things, go talk with some of our professionals. And again, we would love to work with you on the insurance, but we just want you to be educated. A lot of the time people will come shop and they'll talk to us and they'll talk to a couple other providers. We're just going to tell you what to look out for. If you want to use us, awesome. If you want to use somebody else, at least you know what to look out for. Desmo, dude, thank you so much for the super chat, man. I don't even know what to say. Thank you. He says, Mr. Claver, hats off to the tea lady and the family, wishing you folks the best. Those that matter are still here. Thanks to you, we know what we hold. Only obstacle is time. How many licks to the center of the Tootsie Pop? I don't know, Desmo. And again, thank you so much for the kind words, super chat, the support, the gift. I can't thank you enough. So it's good people like you that make the mastermind what it is. And again, same thing for our businesses. If cool people like you guys did not want the products and services that we're creating, none of this matters. If you guys didn't want to be educated and understand how to protect and grow your wealth over the long term, none of this matters. And that's really all I want to be able to say I did for people, was not even that I taught you everything, right? Just open your mind to the possibility that you are going to become extremely wealthy if you're invested in certain digital assets, mainly XRP in my personal opinion. And you want to make sure that you understand what to do when that situation transpires. And you're not caught off guard thinking it's only going to $5 or $10 or $13, and suddenly you're sitting on 20, 30, 50, $100 million, and you don't know what to do. You don't even know what the first step is. When you thought it was going to be a couple $1,000,000 and you were going to sell and just, try to live your life. Now you have all of this money and you don't know what to do in order to protect yourself from creditors, or structure it the right way, or set up continuity and legacy planning, how to structure insurance in order to be able to offset, debts if you borrow against it tax-free. Again, back to the infinite banking, all those things, right? And again, moving, in the mastermind, all this stuff is like drinking from a fire hose. A lot of people, everything moves very quickly, and it's difficult to maintain, staying up on everything. But it's a crash course, and I think a lot of people enjoy it and get a lot from it because of that. And it helps them start to refine their expertise and then understand what they need to learn next in order to make the most of this event as it happens. All right. We've got Carlo. He says, or she says, be Carla if it was a lady, so it must be Carlo, which is a gentleman. Carbon One here. Give us some tinfoil hat talk. XRP to the moon. I feel people's underestimating XRP in 2026. Cheers to that, my man. I completely agree. So the tinfoil hat talk. Well, again, I don't know if you guys look at Bearable Guy or any of those accounts. Or even Elon Musk. I'll even take Elon Musk. I don't know anything about these calendars, but we're going to go. You said some tinfoil hat stuff, so we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. If you look at Bearable Guy's post from 2021, where he's sat just after New Year's and the rocket's taking off and there's grapes on the table. Obviously, they've popped the champagne and the rocket is taking off after New Year's. In that scenario, Christmas and New Year's have passed. Is that Julian New Year's? Is it regular New Year's? Who knows? Okay, I don't have the answers there. Today was Orthodox Christmas, right? So all that being said, on the table are some grapes. If you look at the Hebrew calendar, harvest for grapes happens in Tamzu, which is the 4th month of the Hebrew calendar. And the 4th month and the 10th month on the Hebrew calendar are one and the same all the way around the wheel. And the reason for that is there is a civil year for the Hebrew calendar, and there's also a financial year for the Hebrew calendar. Tamzu is the 4th month, and so across from that is the 10th month. Right now, we would be in the 4th month of the financial year, and we would be in the 10th month of the civil year in the Hebrew calendar. There have been multiple tweets by Brad Garlinghouse and Elon Musk on 1020. Today, now that, the calendar rolls over for the Hebrew calendar, in the evening it moves to the next day. So today is 1019. So tomorrow, Thursday, is 1019. Friday would be 1020 on the Hebrew calendar, or 420, which is also another reference that Elon Musk has made multiple times. Does that mean something? Is something going to happen tomorrow or the next day? There's been 1,000 dates that have come and gone. Nothing's happened. But these are all interesting things. I also look at the Chinese calendar. We've got a couple months here, like another 45 days until Chinese New Year. Maybe that's what they're referring to over there in those depictions or cartoons. Who knows? Right? There's so many different analysts and calendars, and some people refer to the Ethiopian calendar. And the Ethiopian calendar, we're 7 years before now. It's still 2018. in the Ethiopian calendar. And their New Year's is on September 11th. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. That's some of the tinfoil hat talk for you. These are all things that I look at, I find interesting. I don't hold a bunch of stock in it, but I do find it fun to speculate and look at this stuff on an infrequent basis. All right. You got Wake the Fork Up. They say Mastermind member and DWP client. Thank you. He says, thanks, Jake. Thoughts on Canton and JPM and its implications for XRP? And what about Trump's tariffs with Supreme Court decision this Friday, as could massively impact all markets? Thanks. Like I just said, it's interesting timing for the Hebrew calendar and No Way and Elon and all the other stuff. So I don't know. I do think that it will have implications for it. I do think that we're in for volatility. I do think that the stock market is at unsustainable levels and needs a significant pullback in order to be able to reset pricing. I think that is going to come from multiple angles all at once, with significant drawdown around 50% in stocks, gold and silver, maybe not silver, but in gold, and also in other markets alongside that, including Bitcoin. I think it's going to be a big move down all at once. Now, how long does that last? Guess is as good as mine. I think that we V-bottom out of there, and I do think that that's when they implement all this stuff. When it comes to Canton and JPM, JPM is a siloed ecosystem. So they have Onyx. We've talked to their team over there, shared different information with them. I think that's another one we have an NDA with. That's been a while since I've looked at that, but yeah. So can't say a whole lot about their infrastructure. I don't know if XCN is part of their infrastructure or not. I had somebody else ask me about that token the other day. I can't figure it out. So for me, if I don't know for sure, I just don't invest in stuff. But if, speculation it is, and it might be, and it works out, awesome. But it's a siloed permissioned ecosystem that other banks aren't necessarily going to use. They utilized the EVM in order to build their blockchain and the smart contracts for their infrastructure. So G Treasury is now partnered with JPMorgan. Interesting announcement that came out. And then separate of that, Canton, like you mentioned, DTCC obviously has an investment with that. A lot of people are speculating that that is where the tokenization of stocks will occur. Like I told you before, the XRPL does have a multi-purpose token, which actually coincides directly with issuance of shares on chain on the XRPL. So I don't know. Maybe some of these exchanges will use Canton or Hedera or other networks, and they'll be interoperable using Wormhole or Axelar in order to be able to settle back to the XRPL, between the clearinghouses and brokers. That's how I think all this stuff is going to work. I don't know that there's going to be an end-all be-all network that tokenizes all of the exchanges and stock markets. I think that different people will build different things that needs to be interoperable with the DTCC and Project Ion and Corda, and settle through XRP on the back end between the clearinghouses and brokers real time for reconciliation using distributed ledger technology, which is again talked about by the president of NASDAQ and Monica Long this year at Swell when we were there just about 2 months ago. So yeah, huge implications here on Friday for the market. And a lot of good points there about other blockchains. Again, I don't own anything else. I've had enough conversations to feel very confident in my position. But again, diversification is a hedge against ignorance. If you don't know, you should be diversified. I know, so I'm not. We've got, we saw this one already. Chris, my man, he says, Jake, you're the man. Thank you for the kind words, dude. Appreciate you being here. He says the OCC approval and potential Fed master account in Q2, Q3 could place Ripple in US banking rails, transformational for payments with XRP, right? Fingers crossed. Thoughts? Let's go. Yeah, so they need the Fed Master account. They do have the provisional acceptance for their OCC banking charter, along with 4 other parties, all at the same time at the end of last year. We work with Anchorage. They are the only OCC federally chartered bank that is fully approved and has been for all of Biden's term and the majority of all of Trump's term. This term, they were approved right before Biden was elected in 2020, and given that federal charter that's governed by the OCC, so they have to be audited, like by the OCC and all that stuff. I do think that Ripple, obviously is a leader in the space, super credible. They will likely get the Fed Master account and then be able to transact, to your point, using XRP over those rails. So their integrations with all the other banks and institutions through RippleNet, alongside their acquisitions of Hidden Road, which is now Ripple Prime, and G Treasury. For those that are part of the Mastermind, you got a sneak peek with my interview over there with Hidden Road back in 2025. So it was an audio only and exclusive for the Mastermind. So if you want to check that out, it's still posted in there. You'll understand a lot more about what Hidden Road is and does, and the long-term vision and goals for what they're going to do with XRP and ROUSD here in 2026. Haley Moore says, if the Japan carry trade ends up unwinding slowly, what is the next macro event that could cause price appreciation? How do I say this? I've said this before, but I will reiterate it because we have a lot of new people on the channel. And again, I want to thank you for being here. Subscribe, like, share. The algorithm, it does help it a lot. So I forget to say that, but if you wouldn't mind, it is much appreciated. And again, appreciate all the new people here. I've explained this in the past. So I put this domino theory out 21 months ago, 22 months ago, really. At that time and over the period, it has been validated by multiple parties with credibility. I won't say what 3-letter agencies or companies those people worked for that validated that it was going to play out the way that I stated. But that's what also gives me the confidence to come on here and to continue to double down on that for as long as I have. So again, irrespective of if it plays out quickly, which I do believe is going to be the case, or slowly, both of those things will lead to the rise of XRP to be able to fix the situation, provide liquidity, and de-risk from the huge unrealized losses that are going to take place. 7U 4 times says, if the Japan carry trade ends up unwinding slow. Oh, we already did that one. Sorry. Haley Moore, I'm sorry, I messed yours up. I clicked the wrong button. She says, hi, Jake. After price appreciation, what is your advice to pay AUM fees prior to receiving yields? Example, take out a back loan. Appreciate you for what you do. Thank you. So the ideal scenario is that we have these CD products live here in the next 30 days, and you have the capability to generate monthly returns on your XRP. So that is more than enough to cover the AUM fees that we charge. And as assets appreciate, your AUM fees go down over time. What you need? Yeah, I already did my disclaimer. Oh, yes. And maybe. What? No. Okay. Sorry. My wife is trying to coach me, which I don't know if you guys like just screaming at me now. My wife, and I've said this before in relationships, men want to believe that things are their own thoughts. This is the secret, ladies. If you want to know how to get your partner to do what you want them to do, I'm going to give it to you. You are the neck and they are the head. Okay. So this works in the workplace. This works with your partner. If you can make them believe that it was their idea, they will do what you want them to do. Okay. So my wife always directs me, points me in the right direction, and then I head down that way. So anyway, back to your question on paying the yields. The CD product should offer a solution for that. I don't want people to borrow or leverage their XRP to cover costs for us. We have a lot of people that, have early on bought a seat at the table effectively and paid to onboard and then didn't onboard their assets. Um, the funds are for accredited investors only, right? So most of our clients are accredited at Digital Wealth Partners. And some are okay with paying the fees there. They view it as like an insurance policy that they're paying on their XRP for the most secure custody on the planet, which XRP is, or not XRP, geez, which Anchorage currently is. And that's why BlackRock uses them to hold their digital assets for their ETFs. So, I think that in the next 30 days, we'll have a way to, I'm very confident in the next 30 days, we'll have CD products, which will more than pay for all of our costs and make sure that you're generating additional income for you and your family. Mike's doing a good job keeping me up on the super chats over here. So we'll jump to those and then we'll come back to the ones over here. We got Steel City Flooring. They say, God bless. Actually, that was from last week. So this is a new one. Breaking Seals says, Jake, Happy New Year to you, champ. Thanks for sharing the useful insights. You have steered me into making good financial decisions over the last few months. In your view, what are your thoughts on ZBEC? Any good to invest? I actually have a whole video on ZBEC if you guys want to go check that out. Again, it depends on your financial goals and what you want to do. I don't know what type of business you have. If you plan to run payroll, so this is something we've done with clients in the family office. We have one family office in particular that runs a payments processing business. They have acquired a bunch of XRP and XLM. We actually wrote that off because they plan to use it. It's held by their business. They plan to use it in their business to settle payments and facilitate that using distributed ledger technology, both Hyperledger and the XRPL. They run nodes on the network. So it wasn't cheap to do it. Like to run a node on a full history node on the XRPLs, $100,000 to set everything up right. XLM is a bit cheaper than that. So all that being said, they were able to write off their investments in crypto. If you own a business and you plan to run, real-time payroll or payroll to the hour, and you want to use ZBEC as your payment for that, or the payment rail for that, then buying a bunch of that token could be a write-off in your business. Same thing with Stronghold. If you, want to use Stronghold as your merchant services or your payment processing between you and your clients, and you buy a bunch of Stronghold in your business, you're using that to pay fees. It should be a write-off in the business. Now, if it appreciates, awesome. But you are going to have to capitalize those gains if you wrote them off when you sell them. But if you pay the fees for, your payment processing with your Stronghold, you're using the software exactly as you intended to in your business, and you get the appreciation and the write-off. So just different stuff like that. Those could be things and reasons that you might purchase certain digital assets to offset costs in your business if you run a real business. Most of the clients we set up, not that it's not a real business, but it's a holding company. There is no physical location with employees or brick and mortar in the state. And so that's why we don't have to foreign register the LLCs, which actually benefits you because it continues to maintain your anonymity to be able to operate and control those assets and benefit from them over time. And that's probably something I should talk about. If you need an LLC, we haven't had a whole lot of questions on that tonight. But we do this a very specific way to provide you the most benefit and no downsides, in my personal opinion. You can work with Digital Family Office to set up your own holding company to manage your digital assets. If you have, somewhere north of $50,000 to $80,000 in current value, and a majority of that is XRP, that's when we see people start to look at setting up these businesses. And we can help you do that. You don't have to work with us, but we've done, about 7,000 of these over the past 3 years. We are the #1 provider for this, structured the right way to be able to mitigate taxes, increase creditor protection, and then also, provide you anonymity to be able to transact with this stuff over the long term. as you participate in financial products, whether that's on or off chain. So again, all that, if you want it to work with us, you can go to the website digitalfamilyoffice.io and you can use the code 50OFF50 OFF DAG LLC. That's 50 OFF like off, DAG like Digital Ascension Group, LLC, all capitalized, gets you everything end to end for that for $2,000. The other piece that we are cheaper than anybody else on is a living trust. If you want to set that up alongside the LLC, it's $500, and it's in your state. We're rolling out a product to do the assignment of the digital assets to your trust in the near future, because we've had some people ask for that. I believe we're going to do that at an additional $500 if people want help doing that. So, you know, all in $3,000 to get you your assets in an LLC owned by your living trust, probate protection, creditor protection, everything you really need end to end to be able to set this up the right way, to be able to take full advantage of it on the other side of price appreciation. And again, you know, would love to work with you on that. Or if not, just, you know, there's lots of videos out there. You can learn how to do it yourself, or at least have the right questions when you go to work with somebody else. We got bad financial decisions, Nick. Nick, my man, at least you know. He says, could you give us some insight about G Treasury acquiring Salvexia? It's like Swift 2.0 for Ripple. I saw that happened. I did not know that was an acquisition. I thought it was a partnership. But it's not really like Swift 2.0. So G Treasury making that acquisition. So Swift is kind of like a global protocol for settling value between counterparties, similar to the XRPL, but they just do the messaging component. If G Treasury acquired that company and they do the messaging component for settlement between B2B payments, that could be very interesting. But I would think the financial institutions that the accounts were at would be the counterparty that would set up that infrastructure. So transparently, I don't know enough about Slovex to tell you if you're correct or not with your statement. So I will have to go back and look at it, and you know, based on what I find, happy to come back and explain it further. And I appreciate your super chat, and hopefully you're not making that many bad financial decisions. He said, like a champ, he says, I'm back. What's going on, brother? What do you think could happen if Trump doesn't win the midterms? I'm kind of anxious about it. Many blessings for everyone. I'm going to give you a controversial one, where I think our government's headed in the very, very near future, not the too distant future. So Elon also stated today or yesterday that we have now entered the singularity. He believes that AI is now AGI and will progress at an extremely rapid rate. The innovations and change in technology is about to hit the inflection point, or has, for Moore's Law, where it progresses way faster than people can really comprehend. All that said, how that would apply to government is, I think, technocracies, technocrats will come into vogue. A lot of people are going to disagree with me, and they are going to say that this is going to take way longer. I'm cool with that. I'm cool if I would love it to take longer. There was a book, if you want, again, we're going to give you some more tinfoil hat. If you go back to the late 1800s, there was a trilogy about Baron Trump. It's The Adventures of Baron Trump. The third book is about, it's called Baron Trump, The Last President. And a lot of the geopolitical events that are happening today were played out in that book. Is Trump a time traveler? Did his Uncle John get everything from, you know, Tesla in the trunks? Who knows? But very interesting. So all of that to say, I think it's possible, not saying it's for sure, but it's possible that Trump could be the last president of the United States. I did watch a video earlier today where everybody wanted him to stay in office. There was like multiple people that said the U.S. needs a dictator and Trump needs to stay in office. I don't know if I agree with all of that, but I do think if he could run for a third term, which he can't because of the way that things are written today, George Washington, I believe, is the only president that had 3 terms. So with all that said, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm also concerned about it, just like you are. If the Democrats do win the midterms, I could see it being very difficult to get anything else done for the remainder of Trump's term. And up to this point, he has been able to make good on a lot of the promises that he stated on his campaign trail. Whether you like him or not here to pull politics or pick sides or whatever. I'm pretty much down the middle, and I think I lean right. Some other people around me think I lean left. I don't, I like Kennedy. I think that he at least talked about the problems that we have here in the U.S. I don't think he knew how to fix them, but I think he at least talked about them. Anyway, back to the super chats. We got Brent. He says, hey, Jake, 0 for 4 on super chats so far. So let's try this. I'm sorry, dude. I got this one, though. He said, can you explain why XRP was almost all-time highs when supply was so much larger? Won't matter soon. God bless. Thank you. So supply wasn't larger. It was at all-time high. Well, so maybe you're talking about earlier this year. That was volume on ETFs. That was people buying the ETFs, getting ready to be able to launch them. That was the volume that we saw come in that pushed it to those levels. And obviously, now that the ETFs have launched, they have moved to the primary purchase point is through OTC desk and dark pools. There were obviously, some larger buys being put on the exchanges, and still are, in order to be able to hold price stability here. They're TWAP or VWAP into the market over a period of time with large sums of cash in order to be able to maintain price stability and reduce the vol and get the best price because they do have a fiduciary responsibility to get the best price for the XRP. If there's big spikes in volume, it will drive the price up, and there's slippage, and then they're not meeting their fiduciary duties. So they have to exhaust the OTC desk and dark pools, and if they are going to buy on the exchanges, they're doing it through TWAP so that they're getting the best volume weighted price over a period of time. All that being said, in 2017, when we hit $3.84, which was actually like early 2018, that was when Ripple locked up the escrow. So there was literally a supply shock with half of the supply available out there for purchase. And maybe even less than that, because again, some of it's locked up for different reasons. Other people are holding it. There's not a whole lot available for trade, and that's why the volume pushed the price to the levels that it did. And that's what's going to happen here again when the OTC desks are eaten up, when the dark pools are empty, and they have to go to the exchange with all of the volume and the demand that they're going to see at one time. That's what's going to push price to 3 and 4 digits so that they can start using it. And then once they start using it, the volume from the transactions over the network will maintain price stability, and there'll be a price floor for the asset. Not to say it couldn't go over it and come back to the price floor a little bit. That's possible. But I do think that there will be a steady volume and demand for the asset, depending on what markets it gets implemented in. And then that'll escalate over time as they introduce new markets or different use cases for the asset to settle it. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And again, appreciate the super chat. And I'm sorry I missed the other ones. We got Steel City Flooring. They say, God bless you. If you had 4% in XRP and it appreciated fast, if you had top 4% of wallets, I'm assuming what you mean, in XRP, it appreciated fast. If you didn't have a trust or life insurance yet and borrowed against it, what ways would you use to pay off debt? You're going to change people's lives forever. Thank you with the platform. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's a good question. So let's just take a look at what top 4% is. If you want to go to rich-list.info, shout out to this is weird. Statistics. Shout out to Francis Bovine over there on Twitter. He does a good job of maintaining this information for people that want to look it up. He runs a node on the XRPL, and we appreciate him for sharing all this information where it's easily discernible for most people over there, again, at rich-list.info. So if we're going to look at the top 4% of XRP holders, there are almost 7.5 million wallets today. To be in the top 4%, you would need at least 10,000 XRP. The hard number is 10,285.89 XRP. So if you that tells me how much XRP you have. And I appreciate you not sharing your name. So you got 10,000 XRP. If it appreciates to $100, you got $10 million. You're fine. You'd be able to set things up after that point. And that's why I say, $50,000 to $80,000 in current value, because if it were to go to $1,000 very quickly, which is a possibility, I know that sounds crazy. And again, I'm fine to be the guy that sounds crazy. It has to be the perfect scenario that plays out with the macro events and the supply shock to push it to those levels. If that plays out though, and you had 10,000 XRP, is that 10 million? Let me get my calculator out here, because I'm off and people call me out on it, and then I get butthurt. So I'm gonna, okay, or not. It's like, there we go. 0.0000 times 1,000. It's 10 million. Okay. So 1,000 times 10,000 is 10 million. You're still under the gift tax threshold here in the US. Not that big a deal. If it goes to $100, you got $1 million. Also not that big a deal. If you've got 25,000 XRP or 30,000 XRP and it goes to $1,000, you now have 25 or 30 million. You are very quickly at the limit for the gift tax threshold here in the US. So that's where, making sure that you at least have your assets in an LLC makes a lot of sense. Also, you want probably a living trust, or maybe even asset protection trust if you have hundreds of thousands of XRP. We've set up a lot of those for people to make sure that they're able to get it in there before it appreciates substantially. Back to your question here. You said use to pay off debt. You could absolutely borrow against it in your personal name. The only problem that you could run into there is somebody sues you for whatever reason. They could then take claim on that debt note and those assets. If you have it inside of an LLC, I would probably do the LLC or the trust first, just so that you have corporate veil and creditor protection, and then get the loan, and then you can pay yourself out of the business, or lend that money to yourself, which is debt, against the business, and pay those debts off if you needed to, and then use whatever's additional in there to be able to generate returns for some cash flow or a salary, or to service the debt that you've drawn down against the asset. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. I said this earlier. If you need somebody to help you work through all this stuff, the financial advisors at Digital Wealth Partners do a fantastic job. They know all of the products like the back of their hand, and they can help you walk through the best way to do that for you and your family. The other piece of the disclaimer that my wife was nice enough to remind me about is everything stated here is my own opinion. It is not the opinion of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. And I do have to state that for our attorneys. We got one about Lewis Jackson, excuse me. He says on YouTube, statements with supposed facts that XRP price will not be driven by utility, specifically in video from yesterday. Again, I don't watch Lewis. I don't watch anybody else unless somebody else sends me the video and they're like, "Hey, watch this section to this section and tell me what you think." I had one of our largest clients do that today. I can do that if it takes a couple seconds out of my day to check on things. But again, a lot of the content that I put out is my own thoughts, my critical thinking. I stay in my lane. I gather information from other people outside of crypto most of the time because I use my discernment in crypto and understand what the technology does and how it's applicable. I'm gathering information from other macroeconomic analysts and people in specific verticals and asset classes that have unique expertise to be able to pull together my thesis. As far as the other content creators on XRP, occasionally, I used to watch all their stuff. I used to watch, Zach and Lewis and, DAI and Brad. Not really. I didn't ever really watch Crypto Hulk. Digital Outlook is another good one. If I had time still, I would still watch those guys. I don't though. I mean, I'm working 12, 14, 16-hour days most days. I love it, not complaining about it, but it doesn't leave me with much time to go watch other people's stuff. So without knowing exactly what he said or how it's structured, it would be difficult for me to state whether I believe the same thing as him or not. Based on what you presented here, it sounds like it's the antithesis of what I'm saying. And again, the only way that I would rebut that or come against it would be all the same things that I've already said. And again, with some of the people that we've talked to, I know that it's going to be used, so I don't really have to worry about reading things on the internet. Ray says, "What's up, Jake? Mastermind Carbon One member. Can you explain how Sharia law in Dubai option would work with DVP?" It won't. Not today. We're going to work on it. It is on our list of things to do here in 2026, mid-year. We are looking to set up something there in Dubai or partner with somebody, do something. And if we do that, then we are going to have to come to market with some products that meet that compliance for many of the people that live in that jurisdiction. So as of today, unfortunately, we don't have anything. We do pay interest. But over the long term, I'm sure that we can structure things in a way that meet the religious specifications that are required for Sharia law. We got bearded boat guy, the bearded boat guy. I like it. He says, "Jake, thanks for all that you do. If dad has an LLC and trust, 20 years later passes, best way to mitigate estate taxes in the future above lifetime exemption." Ooh. So what he's asking is, let's say, somebody passes away that has the assets in a trust that moved to you. They skip probate and they skip the estate taxes. If they're structured the right way in the type of trust that I would like a dynasty trust, there would just be new people that would take over and new beneficiaries. It wouldn't flow through to the underlying beneficiaries. But if it did, and it exceeded that $30 million and you were subject to the 40% taxes over that, you would ideally, you're going to have to be philanthropic. That's really the only way that you're going to be able to mitigate taxes above that point, is setting up a family foundation or a charitable remainder trust or a donor advised fund. You could, City of Dallas and other large cities have a donor advised fund that you can allocate to that helps your community. If you set up your own family foundation, then you can have your kids on the foundation, pay them a salary. You can also do a lot of good in your community or for whatever cause is on your heart with that foundation. But anything above the $30 million threshold that's not an insurance policy or structured the right way in a trust is going to be subject to the estate taxes here in the U.S. And if it's your single dad, he wasn't married, that's going to be $15 million here in 2026. So between you and your spouse, you get 30 over your lifetime. Just individually, it's 15. So it could just be 15 million. Anything in excess of that, you're going to be paying 40% taxes on if you don't donate it to something that you still have somewhat control and usability over. If you want to learn more about, if you have a specific situation, want to reach out to us, we could absolutely help you. I would get you with Dan Plaskett, who's the head of our estate planning, design, and architecture. And we actually just shot a podcast last week on all these philanthropic structures that we will be dropping for you in the near term. So I think we should get that edited back tomorrow or the next day, and that'll be coming out. So maybe wait a couple of days, look for that conversation, and then if it feels compelling to you and you want to understand more and how it might be used in your circumstances, again, you can just reach out to us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. We are an hour and a half in here, and I finally got through the super chats that were at the bottom when I first started the show. So if you do have a super chat on here and I've missed it, don't be afraid to send it to us via DM on some other social media platform. If we get them there, we will stockpile them. I will answer them on the next Monday live here for you guys. We got EINs null 01. They say, legend. What's up? Please explain why you think the 10-year Japanese bond instead of the other years. Good opportunity to explain the bond market and debt rollovers. Thanks. You want to know the truth? Again, this is one of those that I listen to people smarter than me. I don't pretend to know everything about the bond market. Michael Gade, or Gayad, however you want to say his last name, and then Dario and a few other people, they're on Twitter. I've talked to them, not extensively about the reverse carry trade, but had multiple conversations. And then I've had conversations with a few other close people that understand the bond market and operated in it for multiple decades. In those conversations, they told me the most pivotal bond to watch for the bond market in Japan would be the 10-year. Short-term bonds can rise aggressively, and that's okay. You can even have the yield curve inverted, and that'll persist for a period of time. I'm not the most educated on this, but I'm going to kind of relay what they told me, because that's in the middle of the curve. To your point, when people are refinancing debt and they're moving out the yield curve and projecting in time, that's kind of the most pivotal one to watch. And if it rises aggressively, it can undermine other stuff. So, and it also combats inflation. Again, probably not, but I'm probably butchering this to the level that other people that know bonds way better than me would state it. But again, I listen to people smarter than me. They're the ones that have told me to watch that one in particular. And so that's why I continue to watch that one over the others. All right. Scroll all the way up here. And we got one more before we jump to the bottom. We got Jacob. He says, the ultimate legend. You guys are wild. Thank you for the compliment. He says, thank you for all that you do. What could cause Iran to shut down the Strait of Hormuz? And also other factors could cause oil to spike. So I do think it is going to be between Iran and Israel. So they're on either side of the Strait of Hormuz there. And so if there is missile fire and explosives passing back and forth between those two areas, obviously, Israel has the Iron Dome. But if Iran tries to attack them, and Iran could put multiple ships out in the strait in order to blockade trade and people passing through there. And again, if there is enough instability in that region, Lloyd's of London could just say, all right, we're not honoring this. There's the clause, I'm sure, in their insurance provision that allows them to, step out of situations if there's war or, acts of God, extraneous circumstances where they won't insure things. And so if they're decide that they're not going to insure any ships moving through there, you're not going to see any move through there. It's going to be far limited in comparison to what it is today. And if Iran just decides, all right, well, screw y'all, we're going to raise the oil prices because we need to in order to back our currency, they just stop shipping oil or they block the strait for that reason. So there's a lot of different reasons that they might go to do it, but I do think that is going to be the catalyst that pushes oil much higher denominated in yen. All right. Let's see here. Lord Prophet says, how do you think XRP could be affected by Q Day that is predicted to be 3 to 5 years and encryptions systems to be easily broken? There's a lot of people that I know that are big into Q. It's not my thing. Again, I just take everything with a grain of salt. I think there's a little bit of truth in everything, and I try to incorporate that into my analysis. There's a lot of people that are big on the Q clock and all the Q like clues and all the stuff. Some of it's been spot on, and then there's also stuff that you're like, that's a stretch, man. So I don't know about Q Day. I will say that quantum computers, and maybe that's what you mean by Q Day, will absolutely be able to, and they could today hack Bitcoin's network. Supercomputers could hack Bitcoin's network. SHA-256 is not the highest level of encryption. They need to upgrade that if Bitcoin's going to survive. That's my 2 cents on that. Again, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but if it is quantum, I think that cold wallets will be hacked at scale when quantum's available. Linda, thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Oh, pressed the wrong button. Scrolling. Jonathan says, y'all do great getting rid of them. Oh, there's some spammers and scammers over here in the chat on TikTok. Appreciate the moderators over there making sure stuff stays clean and people are safe. We got Michael, my man. He says, hey, Jake, Carbon 1, awesome with the LLC in progress. Awesome, dude. M&A question. Would it make sense for Ripple to acquire a stake in MoonPay? I don't know who's MoonPay's main demographic and users are. From my understanding, they are B2C or consumer-based products and services. Ripple is not a B2C company. They are a B2B company. That's why they bought a treasury management solution. That's why they bought a prime broker. They are like, I don't know if I can say this emphatically and like absolutely, but in my mind, Ripple will never, and I don't like to use that word, I think it's highly unlikely, very highly unlikely, that Ripple will provide services to retail clients. They've already talked about they could absolutely acquire Uphold or another exchange. They haven't done it. The reason that they would acquire Uphold would be for the conversion between currencies. They partnered with them for ODL to be able to convert the XRP to whatever currency the bank wants in order to be able to lend that to them instead of the actual XRP to settle. And they made some interest on that. So they used XRP as collateral to be able to generate loans for banks that they could then, swap for whatever currency they needed, take it for 7 days, pay the interest on it, Ripple make money on their XRP. When I asked them if we could participate in that years ago, they told me no, that they didn't need our XRP. They had enough of their own when we were at standard custody. We'll see if they come back around now that we got $1 billion in XRP over there at Digital Wealth Partners. Anyway, I say all that. I don't believe that Ripple would acquire MoonPay or an exchange because I don't believe that they are in the business of providing consumer-based products. I believe that they're going to continue to double down on enterprise, B2B, institutional products. And I do believe that XRP is meant for that and not for settlement of retail payments. I think Hyperledger or Hedera or Some of the other networks will likely facilitate the majority of peer-to-peer merchant services and retail payments. Off to the moon says, have our LLC in Wyoming. Awesome. Paid the $500 for the trust and we'll be joining EWP soon. Awesome. Glad to be working with you. They say just under the minimum. Well, you'll sneak in. I bet you can make it. Can we come to Dallas to do the transfer and meet an advisor? We do have an advisor in the office and you can come meet with her. Tish can come work out of the office and help you transfer your stuff if you wanted to. But it's likely that we have an advisor that's much closer to you. We have advisors all over the US. We're aggressively hiring advisors for Digital Wealth Partners. I think we have 4 more advisors starting next week and then another 3 after that the following week. And our company is also hiring for another 10 positions right now. So if you have any interest in working at Digital Ascension Group and would like to see what we have for listings over there, you can go to LinkedIn and apply, and our HR director will coordinate an interview. So I have to think, what specific, a lot of customer service stuff, advisors, people that, understand digital assets and estate planning, would love to work. So if you have those skill sets and you have that understanding, would love for us to have a conversation with you. Let's see here. Scrolling on up, trying to get the super chats for everybody. We did breaking seals. We talked about Zbeck. Appreciate again the super chat on that one. David Schwartz retired the other day. I don't know if you guys knew about that. He did completely step away finally. I think it's actually the same anniversary as Bitcoin's first block being mined, January 3rd, 17th anniversary for Bitcoin and that blockchain. And wild to think that that's been around 17 years at this point. Is that not crazy? From 2009 to 2026. Still operating, still going. This gentleman says, hey, Jake, hope that you are well. I am in the first tier of the Mastermind. Hopefully we'll move up to Carbon 1 soon. Awesome. I have one problem. I can't see or join any group chat. Anyway, when you think Clarity Act will be passed, when do you think the Clarity Act will be passed? Still confident in 4 digits XRP before it's passed. I don't know that we'll see 4-digit XRP before it's passed, but I do think, again, my lawyers are going to tell me to shut up, but I do think that 3 digits is highly probable before the Clarity Act is passed. Just with, again, that is the culmination of multiple macroeconomic events that have to play out in a coordinated fashion in order to drive the price to that level, just in time for then it to be used while they're passing the Clarity Act. And you heard Reese talk about this over there on Twitter today. XRP, along with Bitcoin and ETH, has clarity here in the US because of the court case. Banks and institutions are still hesitant to adopt the technology for them. The back end of the stock market, though, I think is a different story. And again, that's where I think XRP is going to originally be used, is for settlement of the back end of the stock market using Project Ion. So all that being said, I do think that it is going to be those prices prior to, the Clarity Act being passed. And if you have issues, so when you join the Mastermind, I'll say, watch the video that you get in the email for sure. I will not message you ever on any social media platform. I wish I had time to. So if you get a message from somebody that's impersonating me, block them, report them, please. But when you come into the Mastermind, and if you have any issues connecting or seeing chats or whatever, just email info@beyondbroke.com, info@beyondbroke.com, and our team there will help you get connected and get things rectified for you. And again, if you want to be part of the Mastermind, we would love to have you in there. Go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar. You choose the first month for $5 off in Carbon 1 or social. And again, we are doing away with any new social memberships after this month. So this will be the last month that you can get in to social. and pay $25 a month for access to the community and the opportunities that we have there, and education, and in real life events, and health insurance or the health share plan, and like we try to provide so much value, it seems ridiculous that we don't charge more. Psalms 91 and 92 says, I know they were important plans for this month. I know there were important plans for this month for XRP. Can you at least tell us one, or hint at least? All I can say is we'll see what plays out. I wish I could say more. The Sleeper No More, D's the Sleeper No More, says it's D's. I want to say the joke. You guys know what joke I mean, but I'm not going to. He says, please read Monday's super chat that were missed. I don't have them in front of me. I'm gonna blame my wife on this one, which she's not gonna like. She normally does a very good job of making sure all the super chats that were DM'd to us are printed out, and I have them here for me. So I will take, at the end of the day, like any missteps in our business, it really rolls up to me. I will take ownership of it. I do not have them in front of me. I will do my best to get them, and I will make sure to address them on next Monday. Mary had a little lamb. She says, hey, Jake, can you still bench your weight? Or on a lighter note, why is it important for BlackRock to launch an ETF prior to Clarity Act? To drive the price to where it needs to be in order to be able to use it and cause the supply and demand shock. That is why I believe that they're going to step in and be the catalyst for that. They also, when they had the trust charter filed in Delaware and people became aware of that, that is when XRP decoupled from the market. I believe that there will be a similar type movement, but much more exponential when they do enter the market with their real ETF. Now, back to the important question, which is, can I bench my weight? I can bench my weight. I weigh about 230. I can do that 25 times. So, I mean, yes, that's the weight I work out with most of the time. I'll do 5 sets of 20 or 4 sets of 25 with 225 or 230 on bench press. I don't like doing straight bar or barbell bench press most of the time. I've seen more injuries on that exercise than pretty much any other exercise. So for the most part, I use dumbbells. Robert says, hey, Jake, Carbon One here. I live in Alberta. We had some Canadians in our office today we were talking to, which was cool. When will DWP service be full available in Canada? Thanks for all that you do. Cheers, mate. Well, so I guess this is a good time to make this announcement. At Digital Wealth Partners, up until January here, we have only ever worked with businesses. As of a few days ago, we can now work with individuals at Digital Wealth Partners. So if you do not have an LLC, obviously we recommend that you do that for many other reasons. But if you, for whatever reason, are international and it's difficult for you to set up a corporation and you don't want to do that here in the US, we can work with individuals. So if you are in Canada and you are an individual, we can absolutely work with you if you have the minimum amount of XRP at Digital Wealth Partners. So again, the minimum over there is 50,000 XRP. We would love to work with you if you have that much. And we can help you buy however much you want. If you wire the money into the bank accounts on this side, we can buy however much you want on your crypto. So, like people right now are limited to $30,000 a year that they can buy in their individual name there in Canada. As far as XRP goes, Bitcoin and some other ones, you're not limited to that, but XRP you are. Zcash, you can buy more than $30,000 worth of Zcash in Canada, just not XRP, which I think is silly. On All right, we got Are We There Yet? They say, good evening, Jake. With all the uncertainty and potential negatives in the US economy, if Republicans are going to win midterms, there needs to be something positive right around the corner. I would agree with you. And again, I think that that stuff might be orchestrated sooner than later. I would be happy to be I'm not making any predictions. This probably isn't going to happen. Don't listen to me. I'm a crazy guy on the internet. But I think people would be okay if I was off by a couple weeks. We'll just have to see how things play out. Everything is still there for that to happen. But again, not making any promises, no certainty on that, completely uncertain, could not happen, do not know. To make sure my attorneys are happy. Finally, GoTone1 says, hey Jake, the savior, dude. There's some people that have compared me to like Jesus Christ. I am not a prophet. I am not a Messiah. I am not any of those things. Okay, like there is only one true Jesus Christ and God. That is not me. I am a regular dude. I'm a human. I am imperfect. Definitely not perfect. I make lots of mistakes. Ask God for forgiveness frequently and talk to him often. So, I'll take the legend. That's okay. But saviors, I think there's only one savior. I thank you for the compliment though. Given current oversupply and weak demand, do you think that oil price is rising in 2026 or staying flat unless geopolitical events change? Unless there is a geopolitical catalyst, oil is going to continue to go down in price. I talked to my buddy that's in the oil field today. He's one of the 2 or 3 people that I've ever met that owned XRP. Before I started making content, before we even had a conversation. Anyway, he's in the oil field, and they're telling him that oil is going to drop to $25 a barrel by the end of the year. And he's like, if this doesn't pop, like I'm in trouble because I'm going to lose my job out here. And that's the deal, right? Like oil needs to be higher in order for them to uncap wells and generate jobs and like stimulate the economy. Trump wants job creation. He wants energy to be a fair price for people and people to be able to afford it at the pump, but we also need to be able to keep people employed. So I do think that oil is likely, again, I'm not a chart guy or TA guy, but every time oil has hit this level on the RSI, there's been a violent reaction to the upside. So I tend to believe that we are going to see the spike here in 2026. XRP Maxi 1965 says, congrats on being my wife's dream home. What? Oh boy. Thank you for the compliment. What percent are you sure that BlackRock will launch an ETF in the next 6 months? RDS from Melbourne, Australia. Wow, that's a fantastic compliment. I don't know if I'm ever going to live that one down. I think that might be the best one. I get in trouble with percentages. People get mad at me on the percentages. I will say extremely high. I think it's absolutely going to happen in that period of time, but without the other macroeconomic events playing out and the catalyst for them to have to do that, if they kick the can somehow, I don't want to get people's hopes up. I see why people were so disappointed. I don't want to put people in that position. All these things are going to happen. I wish my crystal ball wasn't broken and I knew exactly when it was going to be and I could tell you guys. I was very confident based on information that I had that I didn't share, but like, again, I can tell you the outcome that things were going to move. They obviously didn't. They've been pushed, I think, a little bit, and we'll see what happens here. Again, can't guarantee in the near term that any of this is going to happen. I have to stay away from that. But I don't want to disappoint people. I do believe that that is imminent. I think that they're going to launch it fairly soon, and 6 months seems like a very reasonable time frame, if not sooner. All right, we're going to take one more here and then we'll wrap it up tonight. We got, actually, we already did this one. I'm going to scroll down in the chat and maybe grab one more super chat here if we're close to the bottom. And then we'll wrap it up tonight. Again, if I missed your super chat, I am sorry. Please reach out to us and DM us on some social media platform. My wife will collect those and I will answer them next Monday. Linda says, I got the LLC through y'all. Should I wait for my appointment to open my bank account? No, you can go ahead and go open your bank account with the LLC. We're working on a solution where we can provide you that bank account in the near future. It's going to be later in Q1 when we finally have that going. But Old Glory is a great opportunity. Mercury has been, they've added some additional frictions. I would probably pursue Old Glory if you set up a bank account in Wyoming in order to structure that and use it for your holding company or digital assets. That would be my recommendation. Again, if you want more information on all that stuff and a community that understands all these things, you can go to beyondbroke.com, join the mastermind. We'd love to have you in there. You can use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for a small discount on social and Carbon One. If you need the LLC, like Linda, and you want to get that done and be proactive, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50 OFF DAG all capitalized. Get you everything end to end: registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, operating agreement template, corporate veil service, all for $2,000 if you use that code 50OFF DAG, 50OFF DAG LLC, all capitalized. And then last but not least, if you do want to work with digital wealth partners, if you're international, you can be an individual. I know it's more difficult for people to structure things internationally and meet regulations here in the US. Digital wealth partners can work with you. You do need at least 50,000 XRP or at least $500,000 in total portfolio value. So it's 50,000 tokens of XRP is really the minimum there at Digital Wealth Partners in order to get institutional custody and access to all of the financial products and solutions that they're bringing to market, along with your advisor, ability to borrow against it, and many more things, including financial planning packages. So we got another podcast coming out with Tom Thiel, who is going to go over financial planning and how to retire on your XRP with me. And again, the other one with Dan Plaskett in the near future, going over all the philanthropic ways that you can use your digital assets to benefit society, whatever cause you want, and also protect them from taxes and help your family over the long term. With that, we're going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Again, appreciate you coming and hanging out with me on a Wednesday, and we'll see you on the next one.